Welcome to Love and Speak the Truth with me, Sister Brenda, the podcast where all voices are heard with diverse guests from all over the globe. We make space for stories of integrity, justice, freedom, and joy. So come along. We're not afraid to get into the tough stuff, and we're actually not afraid to laugh along the way. So buckle up, open your heart, open your mind, and let's get this party started. It is a deep honor to welcome Sister Sarah Rudolph, CJ, to the show. Sarah serves as the United Nations representative for the Congregation of Jesus, bringing a global perspective shaped by her formation in Canada and her experiences there as a sister and studies in the Philippines. Now based in New York City, the Upper East Side, she leads our UN NGO office with clarity, compassion, and purpose, while also serving on the leadership team for the Canadian region. One of our youngest members in North America, Sarah carries the spirit of Mary Ward and Ignatian spirituality in a way that is both grounded and inspiring. She has a remarkable gift for drawing out the voices of others, creating space where each person's goodness can be seen and heard. Even in a short time at the UN, her impact has been deeply felt across our global community. I am delighted to welcome Sarah to the show. So, today we're welcoming the wonderful Sister Sarah Rudolph. And Sarah, I am so happy to see you. I know that you're really very busy at this time of the year, having just finished your big conference at the UN. But I welcome you today. I am looking forward to your perspectives, whatever they might be. And so here we are together. Let's go.
Hi, Brenda. Thanks so much for inviting me to be part of your podcast.
Hopefully, we kind of use this opportunity to just get each other engaged in the conversation of the day. You know what I mean? A lot of times, older sisters or people in our realm, my realm anyway, we're not used to the digital age. We're not used to communicating online. And so this gives us a chance to do that. And we get to meet great people like you.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I've listened to some of the episodes, and it's really great to hear from our sisters and our colleagues, partners in mission from around the world, and to hear just a diversity of voices.
Exactly. Well, I want to jump in on some of the things that you've been doing. First, I'd like the listeners to hear a little bit about you and your life.
Yeah, so I'm about 6 months into the position now. Actually, today probably is my 6 month anniversary. Started in early October. And I took over from the role from Sister Janet Palafox, who was here for the 5 years prior, also with Sister Cynthia Matthew for a few years as well. So
Mhm.
still very much getting used to it in some ways, although I feel very much at home as well. It's been a lot of getting to know people,
Mhm.
meeting the different members of religious communities that are present in New York, learning the different committees, how they function, the different issue areas. And I have to say, we are engaged in a lot of different issues. So I have a lot that I've been learning and trying to learn. It was a little overwhelming at first, I have to say, because it's some of this job feels a lot like information management because we are
Mhm.
on so many committees. We receive updates on different issues, we receive invitations to different events. And the UN has its own process to try to figure out because every commission has a different way of entering into it. So the UN has modalities of participation. And so each modality or each conference has its own unique way of participating. I feel like I'm still on a learning curve, although I say I do feel at home there. I'm living with a community of sisters. It's the Congregation of Notre Dame of Montreal. So I know some of the sisters from here in Toronto, where I was originally before being missioned to the UN office. And I've also gotten involved in the local parish. So I'm attending a Jesuit parish, St. Ignatius, which has been just a fabulous opportunity to integrate faith and action.
Sounds like a great setting for growth and learning and your ministry altogether. You know, one of the things I remember most about you, among other things, when you were young in the institute, you did a blog. And I
Yes.
loved the quote you used, love the driving force. I love that.
Yes.
And the thing that inspires me now to hear your voices, because you've been envisioning your path in the institute for some time now, and that's been, to me, the center of everything that you've been doing when you were at the college with the young students, when you were at the Mary Ward Center doing justice and advocacy work there. Gosh,
Mhm.
it seems like you've been immersed in this, and now you're in a place that opens you up to a global stage, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's been really amazing, I have to say, to, have been immersed very locally in Toronto, then to move into this position that does give me this global perspective, not only in terms of the world issues, but in fact our congregation. So to be at the UN and to be leading our NGO and representing the whole global congregation of Jesus, which is a tall order, being present
Mm.
in over 40 countries. Again, that's part of my learning experience is to learn, the various works that we are engaged in around the world, and how best to represent those works and those people and the needs of the people on the ground in those places. So, yeah, but I do feel like the work that I have done in Toronto at the college and at the Mary Ward Centre especially has been a great preparation for this.
Yes, yes. I think people will have heard this over and over from me, because I think where we are now, where we find God placing us in this position, we've been preparing for it the whole time, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Somewhere along the way, we've been on that stepping stone of saying, okay, now I've immersed myself in this ministry, and now I'm moving into something that will open me up to something else. In your work at the UN through our religious NGO, how do you navigate that intersection of spiritual values and global policy, especially in places where the secular meets this politically complex stage of trying to balance what we know, what we do, and where we're going? How do you see the spiritual values helping us in the political or in the on the global stage?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something that I have been reflecting on myself, through my experiences. One of the great gifts that I feel like I'm bringing into this role now, and so just to say too, like prior to joining the congregation, I worked in public policy. I worked for the federal government in Canada, so I had about a 10-year career in government, in fact, before I
Mm,
entered. So there was a policy experience and a knowledge, at least of the Canadian government, how it functions, that I was able to bring into this space. But what I find really helpful, and again, still part of this learning curve, is that I've also been trained as a spiritual director in the Ignatian tradition. So, what I find incredibly helpful in the space that is currently, I would say, quite divided. There's a lot of political toing and froing. I mean, there probably always is in a global space because you have a lot of different interests and voices being represented. But there's a real charged nature to the conversations now. There's a lot of aggression, let's say, in
mhm,
conversations that maybe wasn't
mhm,
there prior to. But it's as a spiritual director, going back to that. So thinking about listening to what is happening in this space. So there is the surface level in a sense of the conversations that are happening, the speeches or the remarks that are read or the comments that are shared in the course of the conversations by member states. But it's also listening to the energy in the room to see where there is maybe there is a sense of life that is building, where there is energy that is being drained. And also
mhm,
thinking about something that I did in my work at the Mary Ward Center with some of the Jesuit organizations here, but looking at communal discernment. And so listening and paying attention in that space, this global space of dialogue, listening to the movements of the spirit. So where is there a sense of communal consolation? Where is there a sense of communal desolation? And sometimes they kind of coexist, in that space. Like different voices, different perspectives are shared that may be a movement of consolation, but there is also desolation in that space. So where do we see at least positive statements that hopefully lead to actions that are, increasing, love, hope, and faith in the world, or at least love and hope in the world? And where do we see the contrary of that taking place? It's been a really great lens, I would say, to bring to this space.
You're using some words that really, I think, is hovering in the space of our political stage right now. I feel this real sense of desolation.
Hmm.
until I'm listening to people like yourself who have a way of managing it. But from the US perspective, from my own personal, cultural, and political perspective, there is so much desolation in our space here in this particular country. And obviously I'm not speaking for everybody, but how to balance, how to see the hope in the work that we're all doing
Yeah.
is your thing, and how to see that it may be commingling somehow, and we just have to sit still enough to find it in ourselves and in other people.
I think, like, at the UN especially, I mean, you see, at least I would say that I have limited experience, but my experience just recently at the Commission on the Status of Women, there are some very contentious issues that are shared, raised around, defining what gender is, gender expression, even aspects of gender equality, so there's a lot of different voices in that space. And you can see coalitions that will form that will be, working in one direction or another, and it was interesting to be in, let's say, in the civil society, we have a designated seating area, and to even feel the reaction of the other civil society members in this space. Like, there was some actual cheering and actual booing that took place that was indicative of, the movements. But I also think it's really important to not maybe react so emotionally in that moment, because the truth of the matter is the UN needs to be a space where people can share diverse views. We may not agree with them, but we need that space. Otherwise, we can move into other kinds of forms of government, whether we see them as positive or negative. But it needs to be a space that is as democratic as possible, let's say, and
Mhm.
really give space for all voices to be heard. And so, part of my practice that I'm trying to develop in that space is to listen to the movement of spirits. It's not like a spiritual direction session where you can probe and ask questions that might kind of unearth motivations, but it is part of my listening and my own sort of interior questioning as I'm, either making notes or just paying attention to the flow of the dialogue, which informs then, I hope, will inform how then I might approach member states for advocacy. So to speak to them, I heard this being stated in this space, and I would like to follow up with you on this. And I would also like to say that in particular countries, let's say, where there are practices that might be denying people their rights, well, maybe us as a congregation, we might be present in those spaces and we might have some really fabulous practices that we can share with these countries, member states. But it's delicate. So it's not as though I can just go in and do whatever I think might be helpful. Like, I need to be attentive to what is going to be helpful or not helpful in a situation and what is sensitive.
Mhm. I don't want to lose this track because I think it's really good. The movement that has to happen, that space for democracy, that space for hearing each voice and without without the booze that's almost natural in each one of us to
Yeah.
say, "No, I don't agree," but allow the disagreement to be there between
Yeah.
us. Just for the listeners, because there's technical language here.
Yes.
Civil society, define a little bit about when you're talking about in the context of the UN. What are some of those terms that we need to know?
Sure. So, I mean, I guess to start with the member states. So, the member states are the representatives of the different countries. So, they are the government officials that are appointed to serve at the UN and to represent their country. So, the member states are a particular country.
Are these like ambassadors or just
Ambassadors or representatives or different staff. So each country or member state has a permanent mission. It's the name of what they call the entity that is attached to the UN. And so they have, yeah, their ambassador would be like their highest delegate, highest level delegate. And then they have different staff underneath the ambassador. So depending on the conversation, what's happening in the space, different representatives of the government will be present and speak. Civil society generally is it's non-governmental actors, so and that can be a broad range of different kinds of organizations. So, I mean, we are there as a faith-based organization. Like, civil society will include academics, it can include, I mean, private sector probably is its own category as well. But civil society can be any kind of non-governmental organization that has an interest at the UN.
and they get representation there to sort of lobby, or do they get representation there to voice things?
I would say generally it's the lobbying space, although there are opportunities to share a voice. So, our NGO, we have what's called, we are accredited with the Economic and Social Council at the UN. So, we have access to a particular body of the UN where there are opportunities made for civil society to speak. So we do, in essence, have like a lobbying capacity because we do go and visit different member states, different countries, advocate for particular issues or share resources or share best practices that we might want to offer. But then we do have space in the different commissions to raise our voice and to make a statement.
Do you have any impact moments that would help us to understand how the religious at the UN impacts decision making or understanding of member states?
I would say, I mean, I think again, it's something that I'm trying to build that capacity, let's say, to make an impact. In terms of the CSW 70 that just took place, I would say we did have two sisters from Kenya who came and were part of the delegation. So they were part of the proceedings. And we held a side event, so an event with another NGO, and we had the Permanent Mission of Ireland and the Permanent Mission of Kenya participate as speakers. And one of our sisters spoke about her work on the prevention of human trafficking in Nairobi. And
Mm.
so we had an opportunity to actually meet with the Mission of Kenya in advance of our side event so we could share about the work that we're doing. And then there was a government official from the Kenyan government who came and spoke at our event, and we were able to make connections with that government official. And so we trust that this relationship that was starting to form in New York will also continue when our sisters in Nairobi and in Kenya to sort of further the mission work that's happening in Kenya in particular. In terms of the global policy, it's a lot harder to see the impact, to be honest, because where you see progress, let's say, is usually in the written documents that are produced. So, like in an outcome document, a lot of the progress looks like particular wording that you might be asking for in a document. So you might want particular groups recognized or particular language to be used. And so, when that is included in a resolution that is adopted or an outcome document that's adopted, that's kind of our victory moment. So there's the global influence, which I would say is slower in terms of trying to create change and influence the way that the UN is set up in terms of like it's sort of a document making organization in some ways, with actions that follow from those documents, because those documents are meant to be commitments by member states, by countries. But then also because we have delegates from the countries where we are present as the congregation of Jesus, we can build those relationships to strengthen what happens in the countries where we're present and the ministries that we're involved in.
What gives you hope in this work that you're doing? I hear a lot of good energy in your voice,
Mm.
and hear that you're trying to build something as you get more and more familiar. But what gives you hope at this moment?
It's the relationships that I'm building. Honestly, it's the connections with people that are on the ground, let's say at the UN in terms of the civil society colleagues that I have, faith-based and other organizations that I work with, people who are deeply committed to issues, deeply committed to doing what they do at the UN and have given me some help, as I've been learning. But also, I think we talk about, this being a very divisive time.
Mhm.
And there are, certain policies and practices that would go against our core values as Christians. And so I think another sign of hope is that, in fact, that we resist those kinds of practices, those kinds of policies, that we do take the opportunity to share our voice when we have that opportunity, and that we take action, because there is an anxiety that can build just as a spectator. You can feel powerless, but I feel like there's hope that comes from taking even a small action. Like, we're part of another committee or coalition that I'm part of is the Justice Coalition of Religious. It's about 24 NGOs that represent altogether about 200 Catholic religious congregations that are present at the UN. And we wrote a letter. So back in, I think it was January,
Mhm.
when the US entered Venezuela.
Oh, yeah.
We wrote together a letter, this collective letter to the Secretary General, just to reaffirm our commitment to upholding the principles of the UN Charter. We sent a letter and then also started a practice of prayer. So I committed myself and others join as well. But on each Wednesday, we go to the UN. There's a meditation chapel, but spend half an hour inside the UN. So I feel like we're in the heart of the UN in this meditation space and praying for peace in our world, praying for an upholding of international law, praying for a sense of stability in our world and for the good of all people.
Gosh, we need that. We sorely need that. Sarah, there's there's a momentum of people on one spectrum that somehow brings that hope into the arena. And that sounds like a piece of that ribbon of hope that we all need to hang on to say this is possible. Prayer is powerful.
Yeah. And can I add something else? I want to say too that the hope that I find, I've been extremely inspired by the parish I'm attending in New York, honestly. And because there's a cohort of people in this parish that are dedicated, I would say, with their whole being towards social justice. I joined a social justice ministry and a Laudato Si ministry, but the works that we have done on behalf of migrants, the work that we've been doing on behalf of homeless people, taking those kinds of actions, like knowing that, in fact, each of us has a role to play, that there is something we can do, no matter how small it might be, to be putting good out into the world. I always think about when I think about my call to religious life, there was lots of different sort of impulses, but I would say the the overriding kind of desire is to be a source of healing love in the world, you know, and like it's to be a channel for God's healing love, you know, to come through
Mhm.
me. And I feel like that can be expressed in so many ways at the UN, but also in these actions in the local community. So again, for me, I think it's always this local and global that come together that is really empowering and inspiring.
Mhm. Yeah, the local and the global, because I think it can't be done from the top down, or it's going to be it take a lot longer from
Yeah,
the bottom up. So we have to work in both directions to be able to see the coming together that has to happen from the ground
absolutely.
into the policies that our governments are either living by or not living by. I find it hopeful in listening to you share that sense of coming together as community to put all those small little pieces together that then makes a much bigger impact. And that's what the UN is about as well, isn't it?
It is. It is. I mean, you can rightly critique it for a number of issues and it's bureaucratic and all this, but in fact it is taking all these different voices, 193 countries that have something to offer to the world and bringing
Mhm.
it together and hopefully giving space for each one to contribute.
I feel as if we're in a David and Goliath moment, in
Well,
fact, in this country because of the immensity of the differences that we're experiencing, even not only locally in our own country, but internationally, globally, what have you. There's this tension, and
well,
so it will take all of us. Wouldn't it? So, in your own kind of personal understanding of the mission that you have there at the United Nations, is there one particular thing that you feel keeps you focused and keeps you inspired to keep going? You're new at it, so maybe you're not at the stage yet where
yeah, I
um,
haven't reached that sort of um dissatisfaction level yet. Maybe it's new enough that I have that energy to keep me moving forward. But there are a couple of things. I mean, to be like I have in my office space, I have a picture of Mary Ward, you know, which represents for me the congregation. And actually, I would love to make a print of the mosaic that was used for the merger celebration. I would love to have like a poster of that on my wall because really it's representing our congregation, and I think of the individual, the women, but and the men, I mean, all the people, children, everybody that is contributing and part of our mission. And for me, like, it's out of love for those people that I and people I don't know, but love for these people that really is inspiring me. And I also have a photo that is personal to my experience in the novitiate when I was in the Philippines, and it was a short time, like 2 weeks, maybe it was even just 10 days, but I spent 10 days or so in residence with street children. It was a home for boys, and that was really and truly the best part of my novitiate. Like, it was, I think, just a personally transformative experience being living with them, caring for them, having my heart broken at the end because had to say goodbye and was very hard to stay in touch. I tried from Canada to keep in touch and it was very difficult. But I have this beautiful photo of our group of novices. We were about 3 or 4 together with them, and I keep that by my desk too, so I can look at it, because I think about just all of the children, the vulnerable people in our world who don't have the kind of opportunity that I have, in this space. Like, I feel like this is a tremendous privilege to be in this role. Like, I pinch myself, I think, "Oh my gosh." But I think, like, I'm here because I am here to be of service to the vulnerable, to our sisters, to our congregation. And that for me, like, that drives me. It really does. I think about these people that I love and care for, and I think this is for them. And it's
Hmm.
for the unknown them also.
Yes, yes. Oh, I completely understand what you're saying there, Sarah. Because in my life, I often have those pinch me moments, when I get asked to do something that I never thought, "Who you talking? Who, me?" That I get to ask to do something meaningful, and it's for, like, the picture you have on your in your office, recalling those, moments that inspired you, broke your heart, and moved you into a position where you might have a voice to make changes for certain things that are going wrong in the world, right?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that. That touched me
Mm.
deeply, and I know that you're very talented, and there are many other places you can be in your own personal life, but here there's this communal perspective that you live with, talking about the mosaic. That was very meaningful to me too, to have all of our faces there together and all those symbols, that bring us together under the beautiful, image of Mary Ward, who sort of inspires us into being. How do you feel about religion's role in making a difference? Because religion can be off-putting. God talk isn't easy for everybody. How does faith, religion impact what we have to say on the global stage?
Yeah, it's a it's a big question. I mean, I think first of all, as Christians, it's just part of our mission as Christians. I mean, like, we follow Jesus' example, and so in some ways, there's just no way that we cannot do those things. That we
Mhm.
have to speak out. We have to be walking alongside and loving those who are being mistreated, abused, ignored. That there is, like, our faith compels us to this, and so in a space like the UN, the truth is that the language that we use, we might identify ourselves as a faith-based organization, like when we introduce ourselves, but we don't always use the language of faith, like the spiritual language that we are accustomed to, like in a church, for example, doesn't always find its way into the language of the UN in terms of our discourse. But I
Rightly.
think it's always there. Like, so, but we use, I mean, we use words that would reflect our Catholic social teaching, like the principles around human dignity, the rights of all people, the sanctity of life. I mean, that is part of our mission as Christians, and to preserve life at all stages. Words like solidarity, I mean, and our actions, in fact, to be a faithful witness, to be consistent, to be present, to speak up as often as it takes. If it's decades, of speaking up at the UN, that we are there, and it
Mhm.
matters as people of faith. And I think, to be honest, it's hard. It's hard to be identified, or it can be hard to be identified or to identify yourself as a person of faith, or as a religious, or a Catholic religious in certain spaces. But I think it's really important that we do as best we can to be present, because we have to show a side of our church that sometimes is not seen, because there's all kinds of larger, maybe, preconceptions, or whether grounded in truth or not, that would present the church in a very negative light as being not charitable in the way that we strive to be charitable. And so I
Mhm.
think to try to put another face, that face of love, of Jesus is this healing love, in the world, I think it's really important. Yeah, so it comes out in different ways, but not always in a strictly religious or spiritual sense in terms of language.
I think our Pope is a good example of, that inclusivity and that using language, speaking out in ways that reflect what we believe, but in language that people can understand. It's not necessarily strictly religious language, eh?
Yeah, because we need to be heard. I mean, that's the thing, is we need to be heard, and we need to create space in order to be heard. So maybe if like a very strictly religious language is going to be off-putting to somebody, then we don't enter with that first. I think we share our faith and our, religious backgrounds in sort of by degrees, depending on the situation.
So this is great. I think I'm going to ask you the question of the day. What's love got to do with all of this?
No, love is the only reason for it, Brenda. Honestly, you mentioned the blogs that I had, Love the Driving Force.
Hmm.
And I chose that title because that is what attracted me to the Institute. When I was discerning, I went to the IBVM, at the time, IBVM website. There's a banner, and it was an image of Mary Ward, and it said, Love the Driving Force. And I thought, yes, like that speaks to my heart directly. That is who I want to be, who I am, who God is calling me to be. And so in all that I do, not perfectly, but I hope by the grace of God that love is really driving me in all of these actions and all of the interactions, the relationship building at the UN, the trying to represent our global congregation in the documents that we craft, those kinds of things, like to really let love, and especially God's healing love in a divided, hurting world, to offer that healing love to all people and our planet.
Well, Sarah, well, you have, given me some inspiration and some hope, and I am so grateful that we've had this conversation and we can share with the listeners who might then take it to another level, to a deeper level, to a wider level, and share it with friends and family. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Brenda. This has been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
And now for the wrap up. You have just had a human experience from a spiritual being. We have so much to learn. So go forth to love and speak the truth. Ad majorem Dei gloriam. A couple of announcements. Don't forget to rate and follow us on Apple Podcast or Spotify. We are on Facebook at Love Speak Truth, and visit our website at www.lovespeaktruth.org. For a few credits, when all is said and done, I give thanks and credit for sponsors, producers, and contributors who made this podcast possible. Mega shout out to IBVM Region Leadership, Megan Butel, Jennifer Schmitz, Laurenti Wright for the keyboard music, the late Sister Maria Beer IBVM for her composition of the music Women Bearing Witness. It takes a village, folks. Thanks for listening to Love Speak Truth.